G'day and welcome to Beyond Sobriety, a podcast where you'll hear real stories of recovery and resilience come to life. I'm Michael and I'm an alcoholic, your host and fellow journeyer on the road to sobriety. As someone who has walked the path of addiction and found solace in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I understand the challenges and triumphs that come with striving for sobriety. And it's with this understanding and empathy that we've created this podcast. Our purpose here at Beyond Sobriety is simple yet profound: to provide a platform where individuals can share their experience with alcoholism openly and authentically. Through candid conversation, personal narrative, and expert insights, we aim to inspire hope, foster understanding, and offer a beacon of light to those still navigating the shadows of addiction. We'd love for you to be a part of this growing community. If you find value in the stories that you hear today, please consider liking and leaving a comment and sharing this episode with somebody who might benefit from hearing it. Your support will help spread the message of hope and resilience to more people who need it. I'm Michael and I'm an alcoholic, and this is Beyond Sobriety. Why don't you introduce yourself, Helen?
Well, my name's Helen and I'm an alcoholic. I'm 62 years of age. I've been sober now for 5 years. While I was drinking, I was still working full-time. Worked in libraries all my life. So currently I am semi-retired and work casually in the library.
God, that must be nice, being semi-retired.
It's great. It's great. Yeah, I feel very blessed. Actually, it's nice not to have to work.
It's good. You work hard your whole life and there's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I've worked since I was 16.
Yeah.
Even when I had my children, 3 children, I've worked throughout that whole time. Now, because I have a little bit of super, I can take it a bit easier. So
good on you.
Yeah.
Look, when I hear stories like that, it always reminds me of my grandfather, who worked like a dog his entire life, like hard work. And then in his mid-60s got cancer and died. I sit there and go, he never got a chance. He never got a chance to sit back and relax. And what's amazing about that is he has brothers who live overseas who have only just passed away now. So to put that in context, I was 10 years old when he died and I'm pushing 40. If he had not lived the lifestyle he lived with, I guess, the smoking and the drinking, because the cancer he got was directly related to his smoking. His brothers didn't smoke. And some of them, his elder brother only passed away like last year.
Wow.
So that tells me that if he hadn't, he could have seen his great-grandchildren and been a part of that. And, so look, You've got an amazing opportunity. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I didn't want to keep working full time because, like you said, life's short, Both of my parents lived to be in their mid-80s, but I have a brother that passed away at 45, so it's hard to know when your time's up, So I like to try and live with more purpose these days.
Well, knowing you, I can definitely say that's true. You are living that out. But look, why don't we go back a bit? Growing up, what was the attitude towards alcohol in your house?
It was something that was consumed when I was very young. It was something that was consumed for a celebration. Christmas, friends would visit and my parents would have alcohol. It wasn't a daily thing in my household. And then as I got older, and I have 3 older brothers. One of them in particular was at an age where he started going out drinking with his mates, all that sort of thing. The younger one did too. This was the 70s, so the alcohol started to flow a bit more freely in the house. Dad was a bit older, Mum was a bit older. So that might have been weekends, they had some drinks as well. My mum drank a bit of scotch. She'd only have 1 or 2 glasses. Dad was very strict on how much she was allowed to drink. And sometimes you could see that at a party. My mum drank very fast and too much at a party. She was a binge drinker.
Okay, so I was going to ask, there was obviously a reason why your dad watched that so closely.
Yeah. It's only since I've had problems, with my drinking that I can look back and see that. I just thought, Mum's, at a party, she's had too much to drink and she's sick. Dad used to get really worried. He'd try making her drinks in taller glasses, things like that, trying to...
All those wives' tales about...
Controlling it, yeah. She didn't think she had a problem at all. And look, I don't think she did. She wasn't a daily drinker. It never really became a huge problem
It was just when
for
she
drinking.
had the opportunity, she overindulged?
Yes.
Okay, so it never developed into anything really more than that?
Not at that stage. No, definitely not. They didn't have a lot of money, like a very working class family. Yeah, it wasn't a lot of money to throw around, so it was limited. But it used to upset my mum that my dad did that.
How did you start drinking?
So it might have been, when I was young, I don't know, maybe 10 on the weekends, and if Dad had just mowed the lawn, or he was a builder, a carpenter, so he would get hot and thirsty, so he'd have a beer and he'd make all the rest of us a shandy. And it would be like 9 parts lemonade and 1 part beer. But I guess they had the attitude of, if it's introduced as seen to be an okay, then maybe we wouldn't have a problem with it later in life.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot. And that's what it was like when I was growing up. There was that whole idea of people overseas in European countries, they have their kids drinking young, and it was just assumed that nobody had a problem with it. It was that kind of Australian yobbo culture of getting a few tinnies all the time and getting drunk, and that was seen as less classy as the other one. But really, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was when you were very young. Did you start drinking socially as a teenager, like going out? Like obviously there was socials, there was parties, there was get-togethers.
I gained a group of friends that were neighbours really at the age of about 15. We started hanging out together, and so someone might have been able to get a case of beer, and so I started maybe to have like 1 or 2 beers then, and that would be all I would have. I didn't really like the taste of it. I just did it because everyone else did. And I didn't really feel the effect. When I was about 16, I think it was, I went to one of the neighbours' birthday parties and I drank some sparkling wine, Bodega it was called. I can remember feeling drunk, like it was a pool party. So I sort of had a couple of glasses, dived in the water, came out and thought, what happened? Like the night was over and I must have been in a blackout. I don't remember how much I drank. Say a couple, it might have been more than that.
How old were you then?
About 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fairly normal age to start drinking.
Yeah.
No, obviously it's illegal before 18, but, no one really cares about that.
It was much easier back then too. And,
I
could get into, different clubs with just saying what my date of birth was, and
the honour system.
Yeah, that's it. And maybe you would have someone else's driver's licence or something like that. Like it was just, I've got to try and remember their birthday, so I don't get it wrong. Yeah, but yeah.
Gosh, I'm glad I never tried that. Actually, no, I did once. It was when I was first in the Navy and we're getting into the local RSL, a tiny little crappy place down in Victoria. The only way I had to falsify my Navy ID.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'll never remember someone else's date of birth. So I just made my year. I was 17. I made my year 1 less.
Yeah.
So that gave me an extra year because I was there going, I'll never remember this. And they never, I was freaking out. Like the cops were going to show up. It was like, yeah, go through.
That's it. Yeah.
How often would you drink when you were younger and as a teenager? Was it a problem from the word go? Or?
No. It would only be if there was a party.
Yeah.
And there was quite a few parties, especially once I met my now husband as my boyfriend. We've known each other since I was 15, he was 16 when we met. And he had a lot of friends having different parties when we were around 18. So they were having their 18th birthday, so we'd go to the party. But I didn't drink a lot even then. I just would have 1 or 2. I do remember one Russian Orthodox Christmas having way too many vodkas, but that was it.
Look, it's almost mandatory to have vodka at a Russian Orthodox thing, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
It would be rude not to.
Yeah.
So you went through your schooling life fairly, what I'd say is typical.
Yeah.
At least you don't identify any problems with that. And your working life, when you started in your early to mid-20s?
Didn't really drink. It was just normal. I just went to work, came home and had dinner and went to bed. I was a pretty boring sort of person, to be honest. And I hung out together every day. So we were either having dinner at his place or my place with our parents present. So his parents hardly drank at all and my parents didn't drink on a weeknight. So
when did you get married?
We got married in 1984.
84, and how old were you then?
I was 22 and we'd already had our first baby by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I guess the question is, when did drinking become a problem?
can I just say, prior to that, after I'd had my daughter and we'd gotten married and everything, I got a lot of bad anxiety. I was seeking something outside of myself to help me. I wasn't coping with life. And that's when I first became a Christian. That is when I sought through a prayer, a friend, a prayer to say so that I would have this relationship with God.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is probably, in hindsight, is what helped me over the years not drink. Apart from the fact that we had very little money, drinking just never seemed it was never even on my mind to pick up a drink. So the religion side of my life took over for 10 to 15 years maybe.
So that was when your daughter was born, did you say?
Not long after, yeah.
Long after.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't or was it a postpartum depression or anything like that?
It quite possibly could have been. No, she was born 10 weeks premature, so she had problems when she was
10
born.
10 weeks, that's significant.
Yeah, especially back in 1982.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, that's what I think caused my anxiety as well. Plus we were buying a house. It was just really doing these adult things that I had no idea what I was doing,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that she was all right too. We hadn't had her christened and I was wanting to find out about that. And, it was all this sort of stuff, worrying about, because I was having these panic attacks and my heart would race. I was worried I was going to die. All sorts of crazy things went on in my head in my early 20s.
No, well, you started life average, I'd say, for that time period, like age-wise, and getting married, having a family, buying a house. It's exactly what you do. But we see our parents do these things and we think they're invincible. But when we face it ourselves, it's as scary as hell. I heard a quote once and I absolutely loved it. It says, when you get older, you realise your childhood was you watching your parents grow up.
Yes. Yes, I love that. That's so true.
Yeah.
Oh, my kids have done that.
Even though they're the giants.
Yeah.
I see my mum and dad as giants, and look, there's no, I've been in trouble with, say, I needed money for something, and it was how much do you need? There was nothing that they couldn't do for me. And then when you're faced with the responsibility of a small child and you're looking at that going, and I don't even know if you realise it consciously, but they will look at you the same way you looked at your parents, and you go, that's how I saw my parents. And that weight and that burden, it's too much. So when that came, you turned to religion. And that was in the early 80s. And that seemed to sort you out for 15 years?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, on and off. Like I wasn't terribly dedicated, I guess, or committed. I struggled to find a church I felt comfortable in for a long time. But then I eventually did, and I sort of stayed there for quite a while. Can't remember how long, to be honest.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
No, look, I get it. Our listeners know I've got a very religious background, and you know that as well. I've been a part of the same church ever since my mum came to the church when I was a baby.
Wow. Yeah.
Before I was born, she was getting, I want to say recruited, it's probably the wrong word. Her neighbour goes to the church. She still does before I was born, and she witnessed to my mum, and then my mum joined the church, and my dad did, and that was about the time I was born. So, and I'm still a part of that church now.
Wow.
So
yeah, it's amazing.
I get it. I totally get it. When did that stop becoming enough?
Well, I don't know. It sort of just phased out. It wasn't anything dramatic. Just life changed, I guess. We had to sell our house because we'd sort of lost everything. We had to sell our house and move away just through some financial circumstances. And then when I first fell away from the church, and then we had to rent for quite some time. That became very stressful in itself, just being able to sort of feel settled, and I didn't cope with that. So
maybe I should rephrase, because what I was meaning by when I said when did that not become enough, if I'm remembering this correctly, that was your go-to. If something was wrong, you relied on the church, you relied on God and your relationship with him. And then obviously something happened that went, I'm going to switch that to drinking.
that was a long time later. That came in my mid-40s, I
Yeah.
guess. It wasn't a conscious decision. I drank probably from my mid-30s onwards, just, because everyone seemed to be doing it. Like the church I went to was like, you don't drink alcohol and you shouldn't even really watch TV and read the newspapers,
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I was. And then people I knew that went to church were drinking, and I thought, well, if they can drink, maybe I can, and
So you changed churches?
no, I stopped going.
Oh, you stopped going?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, and I used to just do this little Bible study with a few girlfriends.
And look, for context as well, what you just said is completely normal to me, but I also recognise that might not be normal to a lot of people to think, why on earth would a church say no drinking, no TV? Well, what else was it?
Newspapers.
That is completely normal to me because I grew up with that as well.
Yeah.
TV was seen as, I guess a window into the world, and we shouldn't be doing that.
It's the devil's work.
That's right.
Yeah.
There was a rule in my church. You weren't allowed to wear leather jackets for a significant period of time.
Right.
So, because it was probably just the image it portrayed back in those days. That I'm glad to say we no longer have that rule.
Yeah.
That's quite normal, I guess, for some conservative churches to have that.
Yeah.
So can you point, like, with the benefit of hindsight now, looking back in your mid-40s, what do you think caused you to drink? Was it just a curiosity, or I haven't been able to do this and I did enjoy it when I was young, or was there a significant life event or something you can pinpoint?
There was a work Christmas party, and we were all given a bottle of wine. We could choose the one we wanted to take home for Christmas. I had no idea it was all red wine, never had red wine before, never liked the taste of it. And my friend said to me, I think you might enjoy that one. Well, that was what started it for me.
So they were right. You did enjoy it?
I did very much. That one was the one I bought for many, many weeks. It would be a once or twice a week thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a daily thing at that point. But that was what kind of introduced me to, there is alcohol I like the taste of, because I never liked the taste of anything back before. I drank it, but I didn't like it much.
Yeah.
That was what started it. And I think during that time period, my parents came to live with me,
mm-hmm.
and they loved, in their older years, they loved having a port or a sherry at night time. That was that was what they did. And so after they'd settled in, they said, do you think you could buy us some sherry? And I'm like, do you really think you need to drink? This is before it had gotten bad for me. And they were like, we just really enjoy just, the night time. So I got them some. I got, they liked the flagon one, the one that the alcoholics buy. And then they encouraged me over time, why don't you just have one? You've just come home from work and relax you, and that, I think that is when it really started for me to be a daily thing, because I'd come home from work, I'd go down to say hello to them, and then there'd be, do you want a glass of port or a glass of sherry? Oh, yeah, okay, It became, I'm coming home and I'm going down to have a port and sherry, never mind mum and dad.
Yeah.
The alcohol suddenly became more important than
It took
anything.
over.
It really did, yeah.
That became a daily habit.
It did.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I think that's probably when it became a daily habit, was when my dad may have already passed by that time, but it became a daily habit, especially after Dad passed. I had to have it by then. And that wasn't until 2008.
Most people would agree there's nothing wrong with having a couple of, maybe a port or a sherry after work. When did it become a problem?
I can't pinpoint it.
So it was very slow and gradual.
It was very slow and gradual. They say it's a progressive disease. So for me, it really did gradually take hold. And once my mum passed away in 2013, I was already a daily drinker by then, but I think it went to the next level, and it was more like, I have to have it. I really had to have it by then. It's hard to remember.
It's hard to pinpoint the time, isn't it?
It's really hard. I can't pinpoint it, because really I would call myself now an alcoholic before my mum passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you didn't know then.
I just thought I had a bit of a problem, but because I could maybe go one day a week without drinking, that standard, I'm fine. I don't drink every day. I'm fine. Yeah, something happened where I couldn't not drink anymore. I had to have a drink every day.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was about the third time I'd poured it down the sink and promised I'd never have it again.
Right.
That's when I realised there's something more going on here.
Okay.
When I was in the Navy, we have our ceremonial uniform and it's all full of symbols and things that we don't use anymore. And around our neck in the Australian Navy, there's something called a silk.
Uh-huh.
And it's a black cloth that just gets tied around your neck. And what used to happen was when you were at sea on the tall ships, you would have that around you so that if you fell, someone would grab it. And silk, although it's very fine and soft, is actually one of the strongest materials out there.
Ah.
It's very, for weight to strength ratio, it's one of the strongest that you can have.
Right.
The way I equate my drinking is that I remember running my fingers through the silk when I ironed it and stuff and how smooth it was, but you don't realize how strong it is as well. And you got the strength and the softness of it.
Yeah.
And drinking comes in soft.
Yes.
At least for some of us.
Yeah.
Comes in really soft, but then before you know it, you try and let go and it's got you.
Yeah.
And it's got you. And look, it's not that way for everybody. Some people it's just bang, gets you straight off the bat. And I've talked to a lot of people that said the second I had a drop when I was 14, when I was 10, when I was 12, I was hooked and that was it. But you sound a lot more like me where it was just a bit of an indulgence for a while.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And, I had many times I had too much drink. On my son's 21st birthday party, I drank way too much wine and vodka to the point where I was sick, in the bedroom. And, I missed his cake cutting, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The next day, because my mum was still alive, and she said to me, "Are you coming down to have a sherry tonight?" And I was like, "Oh, not tonight, Mum. I had way too much last night." She said, "You'll be fine. Just have one," and I didn't. I could stop,
Yeah.
So that was, I can pinpoint when it still wasn't a problem. I could still say, "Oh no, I won't have any tonight," but I can't pinpoint where it changed to where, it was a problem.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I've spoken to somebody who, in my opinion and their opinion, they gave up before they became an alcoholic. I almost think for that person, it was only a matter of time. And so it's almost like we get on the train of drinking, at least some people, and the longer we stay on it, the more likely we are to go, look, it is going to take over our life. It's just when we get off that train. Can you describe to me, you went from saying, look, it was a little bit each night with your parents as a way to, unwind and chat to your parents, which I'm sure, and I hope you do have some good memories of your parents during that time.
Definitely, yeah.
When did it become more than that and how did that progress?
It definitely became more than that after they had both gone. It progressed just by me needing to have a bottle of wine every day. And then it became, well, it's the weekend, I'm going to buy a white bottle, a bottle of white, a bottle of red, and some cruises, because it's early afternoon, I guess it was probably around 2015, I think, that it became really bad. And it had gotten to the point where my husband did his thing in the garage, I did my thing in the lounge room. There was nothing to do, I was thinking about it the other day and I thought, was it just the fact that my kids were all now grown up and left home and I had nothing to do of a night time? Partly, like it was just like it filled that void that I've felt my whole life. And so maybe it was to do with that. I don't know that I'll ever really pinpoint when it happened. It just kept happening. I was miserable where I was working. See, now where I was working, where I was the most miserable, that was from 2012. So it obviously started back then. Yeah, I was a daily drinker then, and that was before Mum died. So actually I can think of times when my mum had a fall, I'd have to call an ambulance in the middle of the night and I was drunk driving to the hospital behind the ambulance.
Yeah. Don't feel too bad about that. I mean, although that's nothing to be proud of, I've done the exact same thing, not with my mum. My son had an asthma attack and I had to take him to the hospital. And I was drunk the entire time.
Yeah.
I was drunk in the waiting room. I would go out to the car where the alcohol was and say, "You'll be fine. I'll drink some more."
Yeah.
I sat with him in the hospital. He got transferred to another hospital. I was blind drunk. And yeah, I followed the ambulance behind. I thought, well, if I get in an accident, it's good job the ambulance is there.
That's it.
You know, a lot of people go, "Oh, you know, that was," I spoke to someone and they said that was their rock bottom when they drove drunk.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Oh, really? That wasn't even close to mine. That was an everyday occurrence."
Yeah.
What do you think alcohol was solving for you?
If I'm honest, I felt very unhappy in my marriage, and it solved that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never felt like I was good enough for my husband.
Yep.
I always felt like he wanted more out of me all the time that I just couldn't give. I am a people pleaser, so I did my best to be the best wife I could be until it took me to the point where I couldn't do that anymore. And, you know, and consequently, you know, that is what drove me. You know, that was towards the end of my drinking, and that's where, you know, I was seeing psychologists for many, many years about my marriage, being told, "You're not the problem, he's the problem," because, you know, I didn't cope with him. And the drinking, he's a daily drinker. You know, I believe part of that became my problem because I just didn't want that in my house.
Yeah.
And it was his house too. So, you know.
Yeah, we tend to solve problems by introducing new ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our solution isn't a solution when it's drinking. It only makes things worse.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the show so far. This podcast is all about sharing real stories of resilience, recovery, and hope. Stories that remind us that we're not alone in this journey. If you'd like to support this work and help us reach more people, there are a few simple ways you can make a difference. Take a moment to like this episode, leave a comment, or share it with someone who you think might benefit from hearing it, whether it's a friend, family member, or somebody in your recovery community. Your support could touch the lives and inspire someone in their road to sobriety. Your stories are important. They remind us that we are not alone and help us all stay sober. What we're doing here creates a space where people can share their experiences, feel understood, and find inspiration to keep moving forward. By supporting the show, you're helping to amplify those voices and ensure that more people who need to find this message can. If you'd like to share your story and be interviewed, please email me at beyondsobrietyaa@gmail.com. Every journey is unique, and your experience could be exactly what someone needs to hear to find hope, strength, or inspiration. This podcast thrives on real stories from real people, and your voice has the power to make a difference in somebody's life. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to connect and discuss how your story can be a part of Beyond Sobriety. Thank you for your support. Together, we can continue to make a difference. Now, let's get back to the episode. Did you try anything to stop drinking yourself?
I did. I went for several times buying different types of alcohol, thinking that might help and I might be able to wean myself off it somehow. I went to the psychologist and asked for her advice on what I could do, and she told me to pour half the bottle of wine down the sink before I drank the rest. Couldn't do that.
It's just a waste of money.
I know. Who does that?
And obviously none of that worked.
None of it worked, yeah. Missing a day in between, trying to drink less, have a glass of water in the middle of it all, none of it worked. None of it was alcohol, so it was
pointless.
It's pointless. None of it was any good.
What led you to AA?
Well, I had done some things towards the end of my drinking that I was morally not coping with. It wasn't a good thing. I'd done things that I had always sworn that I would never do, and I went to the level that I never thought I would. My husband said to me, "You're just one of those people that shouldn't drink."
Probably right.
Yeah, he was very right, and he was probably trying to be very kind about it, because some people can drink a lot and not be mean to other people. And, I'd get into a blackout and I would verbally abuse living daylights out of him.
Okay.
I went to AA in 2017. I only went to one meeting a week. My daughter Fiona came with me. At the time was also having problems with her drinking. So we went for a little while. I was doing all right, and then I had this little accident in my car. It was nothing major. At the end of the meeting, someone said to me, "It's just a car, don't worry about it." And I thought, yeah, bastard. I said, this is the first brand new car I've ever been able to have. And, I was just so upset by what he said. I left that meeting and I looked at Fiona. Fiona was there. I looked at her and I said, do you want to go and get a drink? Top mother. Getting her to have another drink. So we drank that night, and that night ended in, it wasn't pretty,
Hi everyone, sorry for the interruption, but I had to mention something that I failed to recognise at the time. What Helen did with her daughter after that first AA meeting was exactly what her mum did to her. Come on, why don't we come downstairs and have a glass of sherry or a glass of port and reminisce about old times after a stressful day. Helen and her daughter had just attended an AA meeting, and for whatever reason, she found herself doing exactly what her mother had done for her. I'm sure a psychologist would have more of an interesting take on this than I do. I just find it curious to see history repeating itself. Now, let's get back to it.
I probably ended up only staying sober a couple of months and then drank for another 22 months. My husband was all right with that. He was like, you're a big girl, you know your limits. If you want to drink, that's fine. But I quickly spiralled out of control again, and it started to become verbally abusive. I woke up one night, early hours of the morning, about 2:00, sobering up as you do after you've been drinking all night, thinking, what the hell did I do last night? I had some sort of recollection of yelling at my husband. I thought, oh no. So I couldn't sleep, so I put on a YouTube video of AA members talking while I couldn't sleep. And then when I woke up the next morning, I felt like a born-again Christian. It's like, my husband woke up, what was that all about last night? And I was like, don't worry, I'm not ever going to drink again. Going back to AA, everything's going to be okay. And that's, I haven't picked up a drink since then. So.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
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 That's good. It's funny how both perspectives on the car accident can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
The person's 100% correct. It is just a car.
It is.
I know, but then I've only had one new car in my life and I love that thing.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a car to me. It symbolises my success, who I am, my status as a man or as an individual, whatever you want to call it. So the fact that it got broken and it's damaged is like, it's shattering. But again, it's just a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I think is interesting is I know you reasonably well. We've known each other for a few years now. And I could see you giving the exact same advice to somebody else going, not that you have done,
no,
but that
exactly.
would be the exact type of thing that you would say.
I know. And it's only recently that I've seen that. Like that night when we went back to that meeting, I was going to get up and share that I'd picked up a drink. I said to this other person, I had a drink over the weekend, and he looked at us and he was like, I don't think anyone in here's ever done that before. And I believed him.
He was being sarcastic.
It was just like, don't worry about it. It happens all the time. But I didn't see that side of it. I didn't see I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, So, and then when I did share that, there was like we all do, there's like, and I said, I drank on the weekend. It was like, because we're disappointed for people. It's not that, but sometimes it's really made me realise I've got to be careful of how I react when people tell me things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a fine line of, who you're going to offend with what you say, and it's almost impossible sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But describe the first time walking into AA for you. What was that like?
I was scared. Yeah, I was actually the very first time was with Fiona, and we walked in. We were late for the meeting. It was the Camden meeting, and the room was dark, and there were no seats at the back. We had to sit down the front, and I was terrified.
Were you there late? So all the seats had filled up at the back?
Yeah. The meeting had already just started, and we sat at the front and I listened to the differences and not the similarities.
Yes.
People got up and shared that they had DUIs and been to jail and things. I thought, well, I haven't done any of that stuff, It wasn't until later that I learned about the yets. That could be me down the track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what would you say not drinking and being sober has done for you in your life?
it's given me more than just not drinking. It's given me the opportunity to really find out who I am as a person, because the 12-step program has helped me to get rid of all the demons in my head from the past, the things that I used to complain about, things not being perfect all the time. I've realised, that no one has that perfection in their life, and that I'm no less of a person because that's not right. It's just things are different for me. So it's given me a whole new way of looking at life. It's also enabled me to be able to help other people with their drinking as well. And it's just given me a better connection with God that I never had even when I was going to church all those years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that is only because I do put in effort to get that connection these days, whereas when I went to church, it was just going to church. And I might have read my Bible here and there outside of church, but it was just going to church, and I never understood what the pastor was saying anyway. I didn't get what they talked about. Whereas I find the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I think it's almost a version of the Bible in a sense. It takes a lot out of the Bible, but it puts it into practical terms that I can live by. So it's given me a better way to live.
Yeah, what I found, or my observations on that topic, is that when you attend a church, the church wants to cater for the person, and so they set it all out on a platter. I've seen this a lot. There's people who go there and just consume, and they become a consumer rather than what the Bible wants them to be, which is a disciple. And so there's very little effort that needs to be exerted on the side of the congregant to discover things for themselves or to do things. It's all laid out there. And in some churches, it's almost seen as a bad thing if you're trying to discover something for yourself. But AA is completely opposite. It's, you can come and attend the meetings and, yeah, that's going to be a benefit, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I found anyway.
Yeah.
Although I love the meetings, I love hearing the stories, what I value the most about it is the work. And that's where I've gotten the most benefit, is when I'm there looking at it myself and filling out the sheets and talking to my sponsor and going, oh. And because I would say you and I are probably more similar than what we expect, because I was in a situation where I was unhappy in my marriage. I was unhappy with my life. And for the longest time, even in sobriety, I blamed my wife for that. I said, this is your fault. You did this, you did this. And it wasn't until I realized that, even though you point one finger at someone, there's always three fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah.
I sit there and go, I can't control her behavior or how she reacts or what she wants to do, what she doesn't want to do, or whatever it might be, or how she speaks to me, but I can control me. And it wasn't until I realized, even if, and I don't believe this at all, but even if I was 100% right and she was a horrible person, the onus is still on me to do something about that. And it's not on them to change, because I'll go away in my room and I'll drink as a way of going, I'll punish you for this. This is your fault because you peed me off today. I'm not happy with this. You might have yelled at me or made me feel insignificant or whatever it might have been. But that was my coping mechanism, rather than standing up, being an adult and saying, no, let's talk about this and let's sort this out. And I can honestly say we do that today, and our relationship is a million times better because of it. What were some of the fears that was attached to stopping drinking?
I was fearful of, my life was I was already miserable in my life. How was it going to be any better by not drinking?
Yeah.
And I was to the point where I was still miserable. Like, the alcohol helped for a certain period of time, and then it stopped making me feel happy. So I'm back to miserable. How is it going to be any better if I stop? So that was a big fear. How would I live life on life's terms without this alcohol?
Yeah.
And I knew I couldn't do it on my own. I'd sometimes do like dry July or whatever, and, I'd make it a month, but it would be awful.
Yeah.
Awful. I was just not living life happily. I knew I needed something else, and I didn't know that AA would be that much of an influence on making my life better.
So in the 5 years you've been sober, I assume you've done the 12 steps?
Yes.
Have you done them more than once?
I'm at step 7 again.
Again?
Yeah, second time.
What kind of role does that play in your day-to-day life?
Well, for me now, when I get up in the morning, I'm not 100% good at this, even after 5 years, but I like to do my prayer and a bit of meditation, and then I've started again writing about the daily reflection. I find that really helps ground me for the day when I do it. And when I don't do it, I can see that my day is a little bit out of kilter, and I like, I'm just like, oh, no, I'm fine, I don't need to do it, because I like to take over and run everything. But just getting that grounding really helps me. I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes on in between, and I try and remember to pause and ask my higher power for help. At the end of the day, I write a gratitude list, and that helps me to look at everything I've done throughout the day. It helps me to look at if I've wronged anybody, if I need to make an amends to anybody, and it helps me to think about the good things that did happen in that day. So I do that every day, and I share that with other people in the fellowship.
Do you act on that? Like if you go, hey, my behaviour wasn't what I think it should be or doesn't reflect my values, do you actively go back and make amends?
Yeah, if there's something that comes up. Generally, I make amends as I go these days. I'll go back almost straight away. I think because I'm not as erratic as I once was, I think I don't need to make amends too often. I do try and be kind to people, and the thing is, sticks in my mind always is what's the next right thing to do today in this moment. Try and live in the moment and not think about what tomorrow brings too much. Yeah.
What's your high point in sobriety?
Being available for my family, being, for my own kids themselves, and being sober throughout that, being present, but also for my grandchildren. During my drinking, I used to mind my 2 oldest grandchildren, but I didn't drink around them. But I couldn't wait for them to go home so I could drink, Whereas my youngest grandchild now, he'll never see me drink, or he won't have any bearing on me wanting to go home or whatever because I want to have a drink, because it won't be like that. So, just my family, just being present for functions, not humiliating them at every function by drinking too much and passing out or vomiting or whatever.
Are your friends and family aware that you identify as an alcoholic?
Most of them are, yeah.
Did you have like a coming out moment or?
No, I think I just told people gradually. I remember telling one girl at a party that I went to not long after I got sober that I was going to AA, and she said, "Oh, I think my husband needs that." And then she proceeded to go around, and I could see her whispering in people's ears, and she's never spoken to me again.
Oh, wow.
So that was really, kind of, maybe I shouldn't have been so open about it,
Look, that shows more about them than it does about you.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I'm not even really that phased about it. Probably was back then, but all my friends know if I go out for lunch with girls I used to drink with, it's not a thing, It's
so you didn't lose any friends or?
Not really, no.
That's really good.
Yeah. People respect it. I find people cheer me on, because they'll say, "Oh, so how long has it been since you've had a drink now?" And I'll tell them, they're like, "That's fantastic," because they knew how I drank, you know. And so, they're really very proud of me, which is nice.
So what advice would you have to somebody who is struggling with alcohol?
First thing is just to get help, either seek medical advice or consider coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not for everyone, but it does work for a lot of people if you're prepared to put the work in. Do it because you really want to do it. When I said I came in 2017, originally I came in because someone else told me I needed to get sober and I wasn't ready for it. It's got to be when you're ready. And sadly, that's not always when your family and loved ones want you to get sober. Yeah. Consider just to have the open-mindedness to consider that maybe you need help is what's the most important thing.
Excellent. Well, look, Helen, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
It's a pleasure.
And for everyone else. Look, why don't you lead us out with a serenity prayer?
Okay. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for joining us today on Beyond Sobriety. Just before we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a gentle reminder. If you happen to recognize anyone who shared their story on this podcast, I urge you to respect their anonymity and privacy. Let's create a safe space where individuals can feel empowered to share their experience without fear of judgment or disclosure. And if you found today's episode helpful or inspiring, I encourage you to share Beyond Sobriety with somebody who might benefit from it. Together we can spread awareness, support and hope to those still struggling with alcohol addiction. Remember, your feedback is invaluable to us. If you have any thoughts, suggestions or stories you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at beyondsobrietyaa@gmail.com. Thank you once again for tuning in. Until next time, stay strong, stay sober, and remember, you're not alone in this journey. I'm Michael, and I'm an alcoholic.